you remember Liquid Television? Well, if you're over the age of 35, like me, then you might remember the animated showcase that aired on MTV in the early 90s. Responsible for the likes of Beavis and Butthead and Aeon Flux, it was an adult-oriented collection of often surreal and experimental animation. I was too young to watch it at the time, but that didn't stop me. I believe the original pilot for Scavenger's Reign, simply titled Scavengers, would have found itself securely at home on the program. At 8 minutes long, it's a microcosm, or maybe a microbiome, of the entire show. A wildly colorful, beautifully animated, and stupendously surreal exploration of an alien planet, bursting at the seams with creative and unnerving alien designs and gorgeous, otherworldly environments. It's like Mobius on ketamine while second screening a playthrough of Sable during a Planet Earth marathon narrated by Werner Herzog. The story starts proper on an alien world called Vesta and follows the surviving crew of a critically damaged interstellar cargo ship, Demeter 227. Most of them have been separated from one another and are trying their best to make their way back to the ship in order to save the remaining crew in cryostasis. And if you have not seen Scavenger's Reign yet, this is the only time on the list that I'm going to ask you, nay, beg you, please skip this segment and go watch Scavenger's Reign. Especially if you're a fan of hard science fiction. It might just be my favorite show of 2023. One of the first and most mesmerizing qualities of the series is its animation. Titmouse Incorporated took the already gorgeous visuals of the pilot and elevated them across the board. And it isn't just a matter of motion, but the insane amount of detail paid to character movements and an understanding of weight, momentum, and even more impressively, proper form for complicated techniques like the lie backing during the rock climbing sequence. The animators paid close attention and studied a lot to make sure that these characters all moved appropriately, no matter their environment, which is so important in a series like this, which is so tonally grounded. Which is not to say it isn't also artistically brilliant and overwhelmed with surreal, horrifying beauty. Vesta isn't just a planet, but a body, and every creature, from infinitesimal to gargantuan, from flora to fauna, is an extension of it. Everything feels connected, as millions upon billions of years of what we assume is evolution has ironically turned Vesta into a sort of machine, one that operates with ruthless efficiency, without any concern for the universe outside it or the intruders within it. The human presence is not a danger to it, nor is it an active danger to them, but rather, it is a neutral party. It hardly concerns itself with the suffering of its own, much less theirs. And that's part of what makes Vesta feel so terrifying. The more our main cast makes their way through these insane, dreamlike environments, they slowly unravel the internal logic behind them. And for every moment they seemingly master and control these elements, they are confronted with something even more vexing and often more dangerous. And while a good majority of this world is equally dispassionate, there are dangers deep within that do have an agenda. And these creature designs are absolutely insane, not just in their creativity, but in their quantity. Throughout the show, I can hardly remember a repeating species. Every environment has something new and imaginative, and it's always so phenomenal to watch how they fit into their environment, like puzzle pieces or cogs in that aforementioned machine. Everything has a place and pecking order, and if you're smart enough, brave enough, and sometimes desperate enough, you can figure out a way to use them to your advantage. But any level of overconfidence or lack of caution, and you could end up dead. Or worse. One of my absolute favorite storytelling techniques of Scavenger's Reign is how it will suddenly provide examples of its flora or fauna in action in its own unique and horrifying way, so you can have just enough understanding of what our cast is walking into. It has shown you Hitchcock's bomb under the table, but the bomb is a clone and the explosion turns you into a forest. Fuck, I love this show. Going back to our cast, they're all effective and interesting in their own right. Ursula and Sam complement each other really well with their combined expertise and trust in one another, but sometimes come into conflict over their priorities. Sorry Sam, but I agree with Ursula. I also wish to know more about this sleepy boy. Their story though is probably the most tragic. So much pain, so much struggle, only for things to come to an end just before the finish line. This shot will stick with me for years to come. Ozzy and Levi, though, are my personal favorite characters, with Ozzy being the best and Levi being my favorite. As Ozzy, with her sick-ass motorcycle and unrivaled tenacity, desperately tries to navigate the environment without a human companion, while Levi is too busy Philip K. dicking around and ascending from ChatGPT to ChatGOD. Watching Levi develop into this robotic hybrid organism in touch with the planet itself is so fascinating, exciting, and slightly insidious, as you have no idea what exactly this evolution could bring until the end. And Cayman?
Fuck Cayman.
Yeah, man's straight up responsible for what happened on the Demeter, and the first thing he does is get mind-jacked by a little green man what done fucked a panda who reminds me of Bobby Hill in a way I refuse to elaborate on. Way to go, Kmart, you little giant fucking baby. You hardly deserved your left hand, much less your wife. We're also joined halfway through by actual scavengers. And honestly, while they're certainly phenomenal characters, and their presence does help move the plot along quite nicely, they definitely changed the tone and dynamic up quite a bit for the second half, which is just the slightest, teensiest bit disappointing. But what they offer the plot is still stellar. They also feature one of the most gruesome deaths in the series. Man, y'all only been out here a day and you already lost a person? Skill diff. But I have gone too long without mentioning a key feature on the production side. The music is out of this fucking world. Or rather, it's in this world, as it feels just as distinctly alien as Vesta, with genius use of synth and soft vocal accompaniments, all mixed in perfectly with the show. The soundscape of Vesta is a thing of glory, elevating the visuals and creating a vibe that can only be described as transcendent. And I think transcendent is the right word for Scavenger's reign. It feels like an anomaly, a show this mature and confident, visually breathtaking and orally nourishing, telling a story of people pushed to the brink against the banal brutality of nature and the all-consuming darkness within man's heart made manifest, with a victory that tastes of sacrifice, as bitter as it is sweet, and distressingly metallic. It is a marvel of television, and while it works well enough as its own standalone season, a second season would be a blessing atop a miracle.